Rumour was started this week that a major player in WWE has decided not to re-sign their contract, which means when it does come due, they're out the door. And you know how the internet wrestling community works. As soon as we all heard this, we lost our minds and started to melt down, which is very, very topical right now because it's so damn hot. It also means we tried to figure out who it could be, and I want to reiterate at this stage that it's all speculative, so we don't really know. Maybe someone just made this up because they're a giant asshole, but look. Here we are on YouTube, with a wrestling YouTube channel, with an audience and a massive wrestling nerd right here. Surely we should talk about it. I mean, that just makes sense. So start your own brains whirring, but for my money, I think that one of these 5 wrestlers is about to leave WWE. Why? I just told you what. Oh, I know you want it. Here's why. You will feel sorry when my head explodes. Let's not stand on ceremony here, Mr. Wayne, and get right in with number 5, and I'm going to say Samoa Joe. Now, a huge reason for this is because on the most recent episode of Raw, Mr. Joe was just gone from commentary with no real explanation. Of course, I'd already heard this rumor, so I was like, I've figured it out. Samoa Joe is going to leave WWE. Now, of course, he'll be on next week's Raw, and I'll look like an idiot, I'll look like a stupid moron. But hey, I am an idiot and a stupid moron, so I'll just be proving everybody, including my parents, correct. I can then be treated like a witch. You remember what people used to do, burn me on a stake and then put me underwater in a cage and see if I use my magic powers to escape. That was a really flawed system. But moving back on to what we're meant to be talking about, Samoa Joe is also coming up, or just became, 41 years old. And while I think he still has loads left in the tank, you're going to have to say that he has less days in front of him than he does behind it as a wrestler. Now, if you're wondering why he has been on commentary for so long, it's because he ran into multiple concussions recently, so he had to take some time off, and this is good. I'm certainly not going against that, but maybe we've now got to a stage where he has got the all clear to return to a ring, but he's so good at doing this announcing, everyone's like, look, Joe, why don't you do just this instead? And he's like, I don't want to do that. I want to beat up fools in the ring because you remember, I'm an absolute badass, and they've reached an impasse. And let's not pretend this hasn't happened before. You can go back to the early 90s when it happened with the Macho Man. If it could happen to Randy Savage, it can happen to everyone. And there, he did leave the then WWF and he jumped to WCW. You can even mention the likes of Taz when it comes to situations like this, but it's not like if Samoa Joe does leave World Wrestling Entertainment, he's not gonna have a wealth of options in front of him, because genuinely, he could go to AEW, he could go to New Japan, he could go to Impact, he could go to Ring of Honor, he could go to MLW, he could go anywhere he wanted, and probably on day one would be one of the biggest stars in the company. He's that good. And don't give me this whole, I don't want to see another WWE guy in All Elite Wrestling. Samoa Joe is not a WWE guy, to the point when he did sign in 2015, everybody was bewildered because this was one wrestler that we all went, well, WWE will never see Samoa Joe, will never sign him because they don't understand his greatness. Eventually they came round to it after the world had changed, but I ain't hearing it with that one. On a very similar level, and at number 4 is Daniel Bryan. Now, of course, Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella just had their second child, so that may change all his hopes and intentions. But if you go and find any single interview from this man, he 99% of the time will say, well, I don't really care where I wrestle. I'll go wrestle in a parking lot in front of like 12 people as long as I get to perform in the squared circle. He just loves it. He loves the technique, he loves the form, he loves the artistry. He is a true savant. On top of that, he has been very vocal that when his contract does end in around about a year's time, or maybe even less now, he's actually thinking about retiring from wrestling, although now you can throw the argument in there that maybe he would change this tact because WWE's schedule is never going to be the same again. I don't want to get into that here, but it still does absolutely fascinate me. We're going to go from I was on the road for 722 days to maybe, well, I did Raw and I did one house show. And who even knows if they're ever coming back? Really though, if DB feels like he is coming to the end of his wrestling days, wouldn't you want one last I want to wrestle everybody tour as soon as you could get out of WWE? Because no matter which promotion he decided to go on, as soon as you said, or saw, Daniel Bryan versus inset amazing wrestler here, you're gonna want to see it. Daniel Bryan versus Kenny Omega, Daniel Bryan versus Tanahashi, Daniel Bryan versus Okada, Daniel Bryan versus anybody. He was going on about CMLL recently and nobody else does that. Now, obviously, if Daniel Bryan did want to leave WWE, he would not be able to go without a fight. And there is this kind of spanner in the works because there's another rumor going around that he's actually been helping write SmackDown recently, and if that is true, you should make him a full-time writer because SmackDown right now is whooping ass. So my point is that things could always change, but he ain't someone that's going to worry about walking away. So I've got one eye on him, like Rey Mysterio, because, you know, he can't put two eyes on anything anymore. He's only got one. Number 3 is easy. It is Cesaro. Because let's face it, within the confines of WWE, they now see the Swiss Superman as a really good tag team wrestler, which he is. But that's not because he's good at tag team wrestling. It's because he may well very be the best wrestler on the planet, and he's just not able to smash through this glass ceiling. If you're an avid watcher of Talking Smack, you know this because he did an interview with Shinsuke Nakamura a few weeks ago, and he gave one of these really intriguing and well-considered promos where he even addressed the fact that he's never really been in the world title picture. And you just look into his eyes, you know that he wanted it. And the other thing is that I think Cesaro would be a bigger star if he left tomorrow. AEW would push him to the moon because, again, he could just work with anybody. And think what he could do in New Japan. I mean, that would just, it would make me collapse on the floor. I would be so excited. I also don't really think he's going to get a bigger break than he already has when you remember that he debuted in 2012 and he's been there 8 years. And the only top program I can really recall is when he had that little thing with John Cena and he laughed about his shoes. Don't get me wrong, Cesaro still smashed it in all other walks of the wrestling world, but he deserves a little bit more. And maybe now he's thinking the same. It could also be that as he approaches his 40th birthday, it's time to give one more crack of the whip at something new. And I tell you this, I would watch Cesaro wrestle every single second of every single day. Which is weird. As for number 2, well, it all depends on when his contract ends, because I don't know, I don't work in WWE management anymore. I decided to leave to focus on other things, like picking flowers. But if Ricochet is able to sneak out of there, put it like this, I ain't gonna be all that surprised if he wants to go do something somewhere else. Used far better recently in the sense he's actually been on Raw as opposed to just poof, vanishing into dust. He also had that really good match with Cedric Alexander recently, but let's look at it for what it was. Cedric Alexander's been put in the Hurt business and he seems to be climbing up the ladder, and Ricochet once again lost. I mean, he sold that lumbar check perfectly, but it's still another L on his record. It also doesn't help that he is confined to the WWE playbook because that kind of nerfs his arsenal, which made him a massive star to begin with. I don't get mad at Vince McMahon or Triple H or anybody for enforcing this. It's their company and they can do whatever the hell they want, but let's not even for a second think that Ricochet wouldn't literally fly higher and figuratively anywhere else. Better still, there is money to be made, especially in, I know, boring, AEW. But again, Ricochet versus Omega, Ricochet versus Cody, Ricochet versus Jericho, Ricochet versus Phoenix, Ricochet versus Pentagon. I can't even say anymore because the word Ricochet has lost all meaning. It's kind of making my tongue go weird. Whether you like it or hate it, All Elite Wrestling style is basically Ricochet. You could even say he's one of the guys that helped popularize it. So I'm going to keep everything crossed. I think that would be a good one. And that's no offense to him. They don't do anything with him on Raw. It makes me really sad. At one point, you know, it looked like he was going to smash through, and then Brock Lesnar ate him. It was that Brock Lesnar thing. Stop this. It was that Brock Lesnar thing. Ever since Brock Lesnar squashed him in Saudi Arabia, it has been nothing but crap for poor old Ricochet. Why did we even bother? I was excited about that too. He beat Bobby Lashley to get there, and then poof, dead. And in at number 1, it is the person that will always be linked to lists like this because we just don't know what's going on in his head. And why should we? That would be absolutely bizarre. But it is Dolphy Boy Ziggles Blue. Now, we all like to pretend that we know about Dolph Ziggler's personal life and that he hates WWE, he doesn't want to be there, and he would bolt as soon as possible, but we don't know that. Maybe he's really content, maybe he's really happy, maybe he's making a shitload of cash and riding his Ferrari around wherever the hell he lives. Now look, could they be doing more with him? Yes. Is that Dolph Ziggler's fault? No. Would I blame him if he wanted to leave? Once again, that's a negatory, Roger. Because, you know, he could be a main event guy, and he's always been this close before they just drag him back down. He's also the gatekeeper for NXT talent. That didn't help none. So he got pigeonholed within WWE, and like a lot of other people on this list, he has just passed the 4-0 mark. And I think when you do go to 40 and you're doing something as intense as wrestling, well, you've just got to start thinking about where you want to be in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, because you may not even have that long left. It would be a hard sell if he was going to go to the most obvious, which is All Elite Wrestling, because my word, the amount of I can't believe another WWE guys going to AEW, and you can't really spin this one. Dolph Ziggler is the epitome of a WWE guy, but personally, as a fan who has always seen him and enjoyed him, I would like him to get just one run, one shot at the main event top level, just to see what he could do. And maybe he would burn, and Vince McMahon could be like, ha ha ha, I got it right. Or maybe he'd swim, and it would be a wonderful moment for all of us, especially those who are friends with Dolph Ziggler. Because, you know, they'd be happy for him. Unless he is happy, of course. I know I said that a minute ago, but I'll say it again now. If he is getting on fine, And who even cares? Why would you get mad? I still don't understand why people get mad when they do jump to AEW. Don't you want people to be employed? My answer is yes. I should have had like a Bugs Bunny yes in my pocket. I didn't. I just ate nothing. Now here's the big question. I need you to let me know in the comments, who do you think this rumor is about, or do you just think it's a bunch of baloney and I just wasted a few minutes of my time? Now like the video, share the video, hit the subscribe button, head over to WhatCulture.com. They will keep you up to date about this, as they will on Twitter at WhatCulture WWE. And you know what? Here on YouTube, you'll probably get those updates as well. So watch more videos at WhatCulture Wrestling. My name is Simon from WhatCulture. Thank you very much for watching. And there's one last kind of, well, I was going to say Mojo Rawley as number 6. That's not true. That's not true. And also, it looks like Mojo Rawley is going to be a member of Retribution, which then makes me worried about that group. Because, you know, Mojo has a reputation for being given a gimmick and then it's stolen away a week later. So if he is a member, this is the longest he's ever been. When they reveal him, maybe they just vanish 7 days later. Don't do that, WWE. Retribution has been a difficult ride so far, but at least give me a damn payoff. See you soon.